Hi guys, and welcome to the 9 Miles Up channel. My name is Christian, and today we'll talk about the VNAV system of the 737. So what is VNAV? VNAV is our vertical navigation. So VNAV is a tool that can create a climb path for us. It can cope with restrictions during our climb, both speed and altitude restrictions. And it can also help us in our cruise regarding step climbs, and it can calculate a top of descent with the deceleration points during some point in our cruise so that we can start descending. So VNAV is based upon all the data you give it inside the FMC. VNAV consists of two modes, VNAV path and VNAV speed. Let's have a look at how VNAV path and VNAV speed works. For that, let's use my sophisticated tool right here. So right now we're flying at flight level 300, as you can see in the flight sim here. We are at flight level 300, and we can see on our ND that we have a top of descent calculated approximately at the point called Alpha Lima Sierra. That point we see here in green. That is our top of descent. This point is not fixed in space. This point is the point that VNAV calculates, okay, at this point we should start descending. But it calculates it based upon the data that we've given the VNAV. So let's try and give VNAV some data here real quick. Now, if we go to our descent page on our FMS here, we can update a few things. First of all, let's update the speed restriction. It is 250 knots below 10,000 feet. And immediately you can see that the VNAV recalculates our top of descent here. Let's go to the forecast page. On the forecast page, it is a great tool to plug in for VNAV to calculate the correct descent path. Now the first thing we want to do, that I usually do, is plug in the QNH that we expect on our arrival aerodrome. I expect a QNH of 1002. I put that in right here. And while I do that, I can right as well set it as standby on my altimeter here. So now I have it 1002. There we go. TAI on off. That is, if we expect anti-ice and at which altitude. And we have a lot of clouds today. We can see Denmark out in front of us. We are actually almost IMC here at 30,000 feet. So let's expect anti-ice from 20,000 feet. We can set the transition altitude. I mean the transition level here. And we would have usually put in the descent winds. I only have the wind currently that we have here at flight level 300. So let's put that one in. Flight level 300, we have 233 at 34 knots. There we go. So now when we execute this, VNAV will recalculate our top of descent. And as we can see now, look at our top of descent point. If you remember, it was at Alpha Lima Sierra before. Now it's a lot closer to us because we just told VNAV that we have a tailwind. We told VNAV the local QNH, and we told it that we are going to be descending with anti-ice on at some point. So now we've plugged in the descent data here. So let's go back and have a look at our chart here. So we're at flight level 300, and we just noticed that our top of descent point has moved. So that's fine. What we see now from our top of descent all the way to our runway is our optimum path. Let's call it the OPT, the optimum path. That is the optimum descent path. Now, if we continue towards our descent point, when we are within 5 nautical miles of our top of descent point, we will get a prompt on our FMS. That is because the computer knows that when we are close to the top of the descent point, we need to notify the pilots, okay, request a descent, because I really want to do an idle descent down all the way down to the runway. And in order for me to do that, we need a clearance to a lower descent now, so we can select the lower altitude and then the aircraft will start descending at the top of the descent point itself. So in short, if you at this point right here get a lower altitude and you set in your MCP, let's say 20,000, the aircraft will continue from this point all the way to the top of the descent at flight level 300, but at the top of the descent point it will start the descent down to 20,000 feet, following the optimum VNAV path here. Alright, so the green one, we're going to be in VNAV path. And now the question comes, what happens if we, for example, start our descent before the top of the descent point? Well, if we start the descent at the top of before the top of the descent point, let's say for example that we at this point enter 20,000 feet on our MCP and we press Alt intervent. If we do that, then we've told VNAV we need to start descending now, but we still want to fly our optimum path. So VNAV is going to command a 1,000 feet per minute descent from this point until we reach our optimum path here. So we will descend here in VNAV path, but with 1,000 feet per minute until we reach our optimum path. When we reach our optimum path, you will see on the IVSI, that is the vertical speed indicator, that the aircraft will now start to pitch to maintain this path, and it will reduce the thrust to idle. Alright. So what happens if we descend after the top of the descent point? Okay. So let's imagine here that we've continued to fly past our top of the descent point, and at this point right here we want to start our descent. For some reason ATC has kept us high, maybe it's due to crossing traffic underneath us, or whatever reason we are unable to descend. That is no problem, because we know that we have an optimum path calculated that is a little bit behind us now, and we would see on our vertical path deviation indicator that we are indeed actually high. How can we cope with this? There's a few different ways. First of all, we need to understand that now we have passed the VNAV path, so we can no longer use VNAV path, but we can use VNAV speed. And how do we do that? Well, at this point, if we want to descend, we will go to our MCP, select a lower altitude, and let's press Alt intervent. When we do that, we will get on our FMA VNAV speed. And VNAV speed is kind of like level change. The VNAV speed will try to pitch for the target descent speed. What is the target descent speed? Let's go to the simulator here. On our descent page we can see a target speed. The target speed that is right now 301 knots. That is the speed that VNAV speed will try and pitch for. It is also the speed that VNAV path will try and maintain, but VNAV path is pitching for the path and prioritizing the path with an idle descent, whereas VNAV speed is prioritizing the speed and disregarding the path. So let's have a look at how this would look. So if we start the descent here, we go VNAV speed. It will pitch for the target speed. And that target speed is in the descent page. When we set a target speed, let's say we're flying at 260 knots, or in this case in Flight Simulator we are flying at 289 knots. You can see that we have room all the way up to 300 and maybe around 310 knots. That means that we can increase the descent speed with almost 25 knots here. So if we set a VNAV MCP speed of 20,000 feet, press Alt intervent, we will see on our FMA's VNAV speed, and it will pitch for our target speed, which we can update in the FMS. What VNAV will now do is it will pitch down and maintain the VNAV speed until we catch up with the path. Now that's the best case scenario. When we hit the path here, we will see on our FMAs that it now changes from VNAV speed into VNAV path, and it will follow the original path with an idle descent. Good. The dangerous thing about VNAV speed here is it will try and maintain the target speed that you set, but at some point you can no longer increase the speed anymore. You're at your VMO. So if, for example, let's try and illustrate it in red here. Let's say that you start at red. Red is also going to be VNAV speed here. That you are kept high by ATC for way too long, and you start your VNAV speed descent at this point. VNAV speed will try and pitch for the path here. Sorry, the speed. At all costs it will pitch for the speed. But maybe VNAV speed will never catch up with the original path. Now, if you have on your FMS a restriction of 250 below flight level 100, it will prompt you and it will try and go back to 250, but you can always overrule it and you can go even speed intervent and go keep descending. So now let's have a look at how it works in practice. So we are, as mentioned, flight level 300. We are a little bit before top of descent here. So what we're going to do is we're going to get an early descent. So we're going to go into what mode? We're going to end up in VNAV path with 1,000 feet per minute descent. So we're going to get a descent at approximately this point here. And our aircraft would follow this descent with 1,000 feet per minute until our original path here. Only problem is that today we are unlucky and ATC will keep us high, so we will end up above our path here and we'll need to recover. Let's try and see how we can do that. So we are in position freeze right now. As you can see, we are 5 miles prior our descent. Let's start our descent at this point. So I selected a lower altitude, I press speed intervent, and now let's see what VNAV will do. VNAV will now pitch for a 1,000 feet per minute descent, and you can see that we're deviating from our original path here. And we can see on our FMC here that we're deviating quite a lot. Actually, we are deviating 550 feet. Let's go back here to the sophisticated explanation tool. As you can see, at some point during this 1,000 feet per minute descent, we will be the furthest away from our top of descent point. When we pass this point, what will happen is our deviation from our optimum path will start decreasing. That is an indication to us that now we're getting close to our optimum path. So that has happened, and you can now see here in the simulator that we're now back on path. That is great. Good times. So we just demonstrated that we descended before the path 1,000 feet per minute when we got the furthest distance away with 1,000 feet per minute from our top of descent point. Then it started decreasing again, getting close to our deviation indicator, getting close to our path showing on our deviation indicator. And when we got to our VNAV path, we saw that the aircraft is now prioritizing to pitch for the VNAV path in an idle descent. So as we can see that right now, we're pitching for a higher descent than 1,000 feet per minute. Our problem now is that ATC is unluckily telling us to level off at flight level 250. So we've set 250 here. For some reason, traffic maybe, we need to level off. So let's see what happens here. VNAV will, as a rule of thumb, never bust the altitude set in the MCP. So it will now level off, disregard the path here, try and pitch for the speed. Let's maintain some speed here. And now you can see we are getting quite high on the profile. We even got prompted with a reset MCP altitude. Now, how do we recover from this, guys? Well, let's have a look at our chart here. Now we're high on path, so ultimately we need to set a lower altitude, and we need to press Alt intervent, and we will be expecting to see VNAV speed. Okay, let's try that. But what was it that we talked about here? Well, we talked about that we have something called a target speed in our descent. Now, our target speed in our descent is what our deviation is based upon. So let's go into active pause here so I can show you. So right now you can see that we're deviating 3,447 feet above our intended path. That is quite a lot, isn't it? So recovering this with VNAV speed, that would be quite the job. And quite uncomfortable for the passengers, because we would be required to pitch down quite a lot. So what if we could change our descent path? What if we could change our optimum descent path to maybe be like this? Now, if we could do that, you see the stripe one here? If we could change this to being our new descent path, we would have a lot less to recover. We would still have our decel point, everything would be taken into account, but we would have a lot less to recover. So let's try and see how we do that. If we update our target speed here, let's say 330 knots, see what happens to the deviation here. You see? Just by updating with 30 knots, now we're only deviating 1,831 knots, feet from our descent path. So we just updated our descent path here by using our target descent speed. So in the big picture, what is going to happen is we're still high on path. We are going to use VNAV speed to recover to our new path, and then we're going to follow this path all the way down. We're no longer going to go back to our optimum path, because we just created a new optimum path with a new speed that we set. So let's try and see it. So as soon as I unfreeze, guys, and we go to a lower altitude here, let's say that we cleared descent flight level 160. We unfreeze now, press speed intervent, and let's see on the FMAs here. We see on the FMAs VNAV speed. So what is VNAV gonna do now, guys? So we are above the transition altitude here, the crossover altitude, so that is why VNAV is going to pitch for a higher speed, so we could help it a little bit here, but let's just wait, and it should revert into the target speed here. You see it is increasing the speed now. Let's get ready, guys. We're deviating a lot from our path right now. Let's try and see if we can recover it in VNAV speed. 4,500 feet too high, guys. So as you can see, VNAV is increasing the speed in order to maintain our target speed of 0.763 or 330 knots. So it's pitching down, it's pitching down. Could we do something to help it? Yes, we could. We could use level change, use the drag, or let's hope that VNAV has this completely under control. So now you can see we've reached below the crossover altitude, so now it's our 330 knots that are, how can you say, are the one that VNAV speed is pitching for. So VNAV is increasing the pitch speed here for 317. It has the thrust in idle, and it's pitching all it can for this speed. Let's put the seat belts on, guys, huh? This is not very comfortable. Let's use the anti-ice. So what's happening to our path now is it is decreasing, because we are now following our VNAV speed path here, pitching down a lot more than the path is. So we are catching up with the path right now with 330 knots. Now, is there anything we could use besides VNAV speed, guys? As mentioned at the start of the video, VNAV speed works just like level change. It pitches for the speed that you select. So what we could do is we could also use level change. But that is no longer VNAV. Level change does not care about the FMS restrictions or anything. Level change only takes into account the speed that you've set with an idle descent. So if I set level change, now we're reaching our altitude, so let's go reset a low one. So now with level change and a speed set of 330, we will pitch for 330. With a speed set of 340, the aircraft will pitch for 340. You can see that the aircraft is now pitching down quite a lot here. If I reduce the speed, what's going to happen to the pitch? We're going to reduce the pitch, because the aircraft doesn't care about anything in the box. No restriction, no nothing. It only cares about your indicated speed here. Let's go back to VNAV speed here. Okay, so let's help VNAV speed get down to the path here. I'm gonna put out some speed brakes. We can see them popping up on the wing here. And now 3,000 feet to go to the path. So we are catching up. And now you can see something happening here to the speed. What is that, guys? We're decreasing the speed. Why are we decreasing the speed? Oh! Let's look at the descent page. We have a speed restriction of 250 knots below flight level 100. That is a little bit of a problem. Well, our path here is, we're still getting closer to our path, but not as quickly as we really wanted to. So what we could do is we could set free speed under this, request simply to ATC, request free speed under flight level 100. But this just shows that VNAV speed, even though it's pitching for the speed just like level change, it still tries to cope with the restrictions that you have set, either on your waypoints or on your descent page. So for good measure, guys, let's try and regain our VNAV path here. And then I really hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that it explained a lot. I'm not a professional content creator or anything in that matter, so I hope that I didn't talk a lot, and I hope my explanations clarified a few things with the VNAV system here. Did you learn anything? Let me know in the comments below. Is there anything you want me to cover in another video of the 737? Let me know below. And besides that, guys, I really enjoy doing this, so hopefully you stay tuned, and you can always visit me on my Twitch channel, or you can come back to my YouTube channel here, where I try from now on to try and upload videos regularly. So let's sit back, relax, and let's wait for the VNAV to catch up with our new optimum path here in the flight sim. And when it has done that, we should see an FMA change of VNAV path here. So you can see we're getting quite close now. Okay, we're within 300 feet. Look at the FMA here. Still missing 200 feet. I'm gonna help it a little bit with the speed brake so that we can just get down here. Now you see it, okay? We are reverting to our VNAV path, and we're doing that because now we have caught up with the new optimum path here. That is it, guys. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and see you some other time, guys. Bye bye.